We're now joined by Boise State Director of Athletics, Jeramiah Dickey. He joins us. Great to see you. Craig and Paul, David Smoke. Thank you, Jeramiah, for your time today. So I saw where you happened to notice a little bit of the conversation about the college football playoff and Boise State rule or whatever it might be. Did you get any feedback from that?
One, guys, it's good to see you. Yeah, I got a lot of feedback. But I don't know, Smoke. At this point, we understand, we can see it. I think everyone can see what's happening. And, at the end of the day, especially as a leader, we got to speak up. And, the way I look at it, what do we have to lose? We've been navigating this for many years, if not decades, and the haves versus have-nots. And I owe it to the people I serve, my student athletes, my staff, and my supporters here to speak up when I see things maybe happening that I don't agree with.
JD, the athletic directors have a much better grasp on this. And I'm not trying to dog the presidents here, but like for every president that knows a lot about sports and understands it, there's probably 4 more that it's just a very small part of their job. So they're kind of, getting the fact sheet from the athletic director of like, here's what we need to, here are the key points. How much do you feel is there a disconnect on the future, especially when you think about the Big Ten and SEC presidents who have certain directives against everybody else and the athletic directors who have maybe different ideas about how it's actually functional as opposed to because you're on the ground day to day?
Yeah, I think to a certain extent there's a level of disconnect. But I also, that's not coming from a place of judgment. Higher education is in general changing and college athletics is in a very chaotic time. And right now is time for adaptive leadership. We cannot operate the same way. The idea of doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, obviously insanity. That's not something that I can live with. I can live with failure, but I can't live without trying and putting our best foot forward and speaking the truth. And right now, I think leaders across our industry, which includes a lot, there are a lot of cooks in the kitchen. You have conference commissioners, you have presidents, you have athletic directors, you have mini conferences at this point, and then you have this NCAA, association that we're all under. I think it makes it very challenging. One of the biggest issues that I see in our industry is the lack of unity. We are professionalizing. That ship is sailed, and we have to figure out how to do it in a way that it can be sustainable. And what I'm seeing in our industry right now is not sustainable. How it's impacting our staff, our people, even our student athletes, and some of the things that we're teaching them, and bad habits, I would say. That hits home for me. I take my responsibilities very seriously. Not perfect by any means, and I don't have all the answers, but I definitely think that there are a lot of people who have a seat at the table, and that becomes a challenge. And I think everyone's having to adapt appropriately to what this industry is, what it means to everyone, what our why is, and how we navigate what's ahead. And that inherently has been difficult.
Jeramiah, I think what becomes confusing for a lot of people is the lack of leadership or just like the lack of a clarity on a chain of command. So like for you, I mean, do you just go to your school president, or when you have issues, like how does that process work? Do you go to your conference? I mean, how do you get to a point where everybody's talking about the same thing and it's all going in the same direction as opposed to going in all different directions? Or is that the major part of the problem?
Well, I probably approach it a couple different ways. A big part of my job is to create unity, and we're very vocal and transparent with what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it. And that's important to me as a leader. But, there are, like I said, a lot of cooks in the kitchen. And, when you look at the conference we're in, and we're in a very, I would say an uncomfortable situation. We're in one conference, we're transitioning to another conference. I'm going through a presidential change as we speak. But traditionally, I'm going to our president and I'm making sure there's alignment. Then I'm going to other ADs within our own conference, making sure I'm seeing everything the way I'm supposed to see it. Then I'm going to our commissioner and making sure that we're speaking the same language. And then, I probably use social media, some may say negatively, I don't know. But I'm going to be out there and I'm going to be giving my opinion, and I'm not saying I'm always right. And there's still a lot to educate myself on and learn from. A lot's happening in our industry. And so I think right now for leaders, this is our opportunity to step up. Legacy is important to me, guys, and value is important. And I see an industry that I love. And I chose college athletics very specifically and not the professional route. And I understand, it's changing and change is inevitable. And so I can embrace that. But I still feel like we are living insanity, and we talk out of both sides of our mouth, and there currently isn't a sustainable model that I see that exists. That means we need to be very vocal and transparent with what we need and how we get there. And that's getting the right people in the room. And it starts with building consensus and being vocal and talking about these things, probably more so now than ever. There's always a lot of meetings and conferences and whatever else, and you have a lot of side conversations, but there's always this inherent fear. What if I say something that upsets everybody? Mm-hmm. Well, at this point, I'm as I sit here today, what do I have to lose? I know what we're facing. I know what's happening in our industry. And if I don't do it, hopefully others will, but I can't sleep at night knowing that I had an opportunity and I now have a seat at the table. It's easy to judge when you're not in this chair. But now I have a seat at the table, and I'm going to, speak my truth, and I'll be willing to, if I miss something, then I'll be willing to wear that. But I think now's the time for leaders to step up and truly lead.
Do you think other commissioners in other of the Power Four, or even Notre Dame with Bavak, with the director of athletics, do you think they care what others think around the game? Because sometimes you wonder.
Revive Superfood Smoothies. Pill, pour, blend, and enjoy. All within the comfort of my own home.
Revive Superfood Smoothies. Peel, blend, and enjoy. Fast and easy, and I'm out the door.
Yeah, I can't, it's hard for me to answer that. I believe that, that they do care about their student athletes and in the conferences they're in. And, obviously competitive excellence is something we're all striving for. And, each commissioner, each AD, they're doing what's best for he or she, but like I said before, I think that's part of our problem. Now I don't have all the solutions, but we have a very fractured industry, and, there is a lot less unity in something that has a tremendous amount of value, whether monetarily or how we're preparing our student athletes for life. And, to me, that's the start of creating something that is epic, that's sustainable, that can lead to something bigger and better. But yeah, I would say they care. I absolutely think they care. At some point, what's best for me isn't necessarily best for us. And, and that's where leadership is so important. And that legacy piece is so important. And, what do we want this to look like? Not today, not tomorrow, but 5-10 years from now. Do I want to be in this chair 10 years from now saying I shoulda, coulda, woulda? I don't, and I don't believe many leaders want to do that. And I think that's where the conversations start. What do we want this to be? And how do we account for all the moving pieces? There's 134, give or take. I feel like maybe my number's off. You guys can correct me, but 134 FBS teams. Like, there has to be a solution. Maybe we haven't found it yet, but there has to be a solution. We've thrown out promotion relegation. We've thrown out other options and opportunities over the course of time, internally, externally, whatever that may look like. Something has to work. Doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results is not a solution. And, and that's what bothers me. That's where I was vocal about the rule. Like, does it change? I heard some feedback that Arizona State, was part of the reason why. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. I don't know. I just know that we heard a lot of talk, and I got asked by a lot of media members going into the CFP, about us getting that bye and how that was going to impact. And lo and behold, 6-7 months later, however long it's been, the rule has changed. It's hard for me to sit back and say, well, that wasn't because this group of 5 team that maybe doesn't have as much respect as others and, had gotten that by. And now all of a sudden the rule changes. It is what it is. We're going to play the hand that's been dealt. We're going to still compete at a high level, and it's always what's next for me. But I'm going to be vocal on things that I see that maybe I don't believe are appropriate.
You mentioned the professionalization of college sports that is not coming. It's here, it's more and more. How do you feel personally about collective bargaining? I ask every AD that we have, because that seems to be, it's complicated, but it seems to be the least complicated and most lasting solution if it were to happen.
Yeah, look, complicated for sure. A lot of that ties into the unity or lack thereof that we have as an industry, and there's reasons for that. There's no blame or judgment. This is how it's been set up, but to me, that is an opportunity. And at minimum, we should be curiously questioning collective bargaining. Why aren't we collective bargaining? What are the hurdles that we need to navigate? Whether it's political, whether it's presidential, whether it's, from a commissioner standpoint, like what are the hurdles that we need? And every state's different. I understand there's different state laws. But yeah, I believe in collective bargaining. I think that is the route we should go. I think that's something that we need to, at minimum, run the ground balls out on and have some conversation around creating a model that makes sense. Right now, we're hopeful as an industry that it's going to change. It's going to change. It's going to change. And some changes are coming, and we're still waiting on the House settlement and all of that. But at the end of the day, I don't see another solution other than collective bargaining. And obviously there's ramifications to that. But I feel like that needs to be a topic of conversation for athletic directors, for conference commissioners, for our industry in general.
Jeramiah, could you explain what the fear is for those that don't want to pursue the CBA, just for the people that don't follow along as closely, like myself, that don't understand it ultimately, of like why that's such a boogeyman? What are the fears of collective bargaining and why so many are hesitant to go down that route?
I mentioned it before, and I don't have specifics. It's been challenging. Some ADs will want to talk about it, some don't, and I understand everyone has their reasons. I think a lot of it is political. And depending on what state you're in and how your state would perceive it, I think that's a big piece. And I would assume, guys, and this is an assumption, I'm not the smartest guy, but I curiously question everything. I would assume it's maybe a lack of knowledge just in terms of what, going down that road would mean for everyone. And, sometimes when we don't understand things, we tend to pivot from them. And, I think that's where the conversation should start. And that may not be a popular opinion, but that's okay. I'm one opinion of many. And, I do know what we're doing currently. I don't believe it's sustainable. I've heard a lot about market correction and what we're paying. And, I do believe there's a path. I do believe student athletes should get paid, but I think the CBA is something that really needs to, we really need to do a deep dive in. I also have heard that it may be a competitive advantage not to do one for some. And, but that doesn't mean it's the right decision. Once again, I go back to, what I want my legacy to be. And I want to make a difference, appropriately so, in a positive way. And I very much care about our why, which is preparing our student athletes for life. And that's something that means a lot to me. And can we find, a path that is more positive, that we can create a sustainable system, because you're seeing it nationally right now. I believe Oklahoma just came out and they're cutting, some of their budget, and you're seeing sport programs being dropped at certain schools. And those are such difficult decisions. I have so much empathy for those athletic directors, because they've gotten to a place that for them to compete and for them to continue to move forward, that they have to divest. And some may say we need to anyways. And I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that. But a lot of us are already operating, at what maybe the industry would deem average, in terms of our budgets and having just gone to the CFP and looking at what we have versus what everyone else has. There's not much more I can cut. And, so we have to figure out a better model, and I'm all ears to, if it's not going down the collective bargaining road, There has to be a solution. We know where the issues are, but there has to be a solution.
Yeah, Jeremiah, there's so many things, as you mentioned, that are not set. They're not official. They're kind of gray areas. And there's a lot of these, as you mentioned, whether committees or whatever, meetings. Do you get sick of the meetings without anything getting done? Is it to a point where everybody should be closed inside this big room and you can't leave until everything's official?
It's funny you say that, Smoke. I talk to my staff about that all the time. Better or worse, I'm a ready, aim, fire type person. And, I said it earlier, I can live with failure. I can't live without trying. And, I do, there is a level of frustration that when you go to these meetings and we talk and so much is fear-based or assumptions and it just that lack of movement and progress. I hold myself to a very high standard. I hold my team to a high standard, and our goal is to make progress, and that doesn't always show up in win columns, but I always feel there's a solution. There's not much in life that I feel if you don't get the right people in the room that you can't find a better path and better way of operating and doing business. We are facing a lot of challenges as an industry right now, and we've heard about it. It's scheduling. It's the lack of unity I've talked about. It's house settlement and payment of student athletes and transfer portals and the 24/7 free agency and tampering, which really isn't tampering. I guess if everyone's doing it, that's something that, it probably impacts us a little bit more because we've had success and a lot of our student athletes are on everyone's radar. And that's a point of pride maybe for us, but there are a lot of challenges, and right now is the time for us to really dig in. And if that means locking ourselves in a room and saying we're not leaving until we find a solution, maybe we're at that point. I don't know, and I don't want to make it sound like doom and gloom. Like we're good at the ready, aim, and let's kick the can, and we've done that in our industry, which has led to this moment. And I feel like now is the time for us to really look in the mirror and say, what do we want our legacy to be? I don't want to be 10 years from now and say I could have done this. And at minimum, speak my mind and have an opinion. Whether people say I'm an idiot or not, that doesn't matter to me. I have a duty, a responsibility, and I have ownership in how I lead this department and institution and the impact we have in our community. And I want to put our best foot forward, and there's no guaranteed success, but at minimum, I believe conversation and having those crucial conversations could lead to a better outcome.
You at Boise State, all the rest of the teams that are, in the new Pac-12, this is a very interesting spot for you guys as well, because not only you're not going into, you're going to a conference that has a name, but it's essentially new. You are brand new altogether. So you'd like to be able to feel like you as a group in 2026 can hit the ground running, but I would assume that's kind of hard right now, given everything that's hanging over it.
It's challenging. It's not impossible. We're going to play the hand that we've been dealt regardless. That's all. That has been our mentality from the very beginning. And I've been so fortunate to inherit a foundation here of success, specifically on the football side. And so we're always going to play the hand to the best of our ability. Like I said, it's not doom and gloom. I see opportunity in everything. And sometimes that means in failure. And, when you look at the day and age we're in and how athletics is changing in general, I see opportunity. And that's really allowed us to maybe approach it differently. I'm willing to take more risks than maybe others because I see what I'm navigating and I see what our budget is and I see what the level of competitiveness our fan base, Bronco Nation, believes we should operate in. And so we're not one to make excuses. We're going to find a way. We're going to create a path. We're always hitting the ground running. And I'm really proud of our team for believing in me and my leadership and really committing to the process. It's always process over outcome. And, we're going to play that hand. We're going to continue to play that hand and we'll see where it goes.
So Jeremiah, and just talking to various athletic directors and just reading various stories, I know I've seen multiple times that there's a concern from those in charge about having to go to the well of the donors, more than ever and go more and more and more because there's more and more money that's needed. But how often in your conversations with fellow colleagues, do you guys talk about, or is there a level of concern about just fandom in general with all of the changes and all of the things that are going on? Is there at all a talking point amongst leaders about we're driving people away from the sport in the future if we don't get these things in order? Or is that just not even really a thought at this point in time?
It's a thought for me, the way I see it, and maybe this is the fan inside of me. I got into college athletics because I was a fan, and now it's more business for me, and because it's my job. But yeah, that is a concern. I think we're at that moment in time, and like I said, I don't want to be overly dramatic, but are we at this crossroads that the decisions we make right now could very well impact our alums, our communities we serve, the fans we have, the student athletes, and the experience. And so, yeah, it's been a topic in behind closed doors, with various ADs and in some of the meetings I go to, but I'm not sure it's at the level now where that fear is maybe apparent to all. Now I've been following social media and some of the things that have been said over the last week, and there's been a lot out there. I think fans are starting to speak up, and this is an industry that we love and care about, and we have an impact. Yes, I know we're professionalizing, but the impact we have, I live it every day, guys, with 350 plus student athletes and people like Ashton Genty and Tyson Degenhart, and there's so many others, and those are ones that the nation knows about. We are having an impact, and I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose the impact we're having on our fan base, and the community, and what it means. And that's something that keeps me up at night. I don't know what else I would do, and so I don't want our industry to lose sight of our purpose. And but I get it. There's inherent risk in that, and my job now is hopefully to speak the truth and find solutions and be a part of the process. And and I do believe there's a path forward.
I can imagine that there's no way you could afford for this not to work out. The amount of money that's being put into Boise State athletics, the infrastructure, all of it, everything. You can't fail, right? Because, but it's not just group of 5 schools or whatever. There are schools in some of the Power 4 conferences that have put an enormous amount of money. Jamie Pollard was saying this the other day. Hey, this is not sustainable. You guys cannot fail, can you? You can absolutely not let this thing slip away.
For sure, but some of that I don't control. What my message to Bronco Nation and to our team here is we're going to put our best foot forward. And you've heard a lot of the comments of the NCAA and what is its purpose, and and I don't remember who said it. I'm guessing it was I know the SEC's having meetings right now, but someone had a quote that there's been conversation of, and I don't want to be misquoted and put them in a bad position, but something about the NCAA and their overall involvement. We know that is a potential outcome. Does football break away, and what is the NCAA's purpose in all this? And we know where the issues are. We know where the opportunities are in a more positive way. And we are investing, but the way I'm looking at it is we got 5 years, we got to the end of this decade to put our best foot forward, and whatever hope that provides and maybe percentage of growth that maybe better positions us. It's in our best interest to do everything we possibly can, because the changes are real, and it is impacting staff and departments around the country. And like I said, I do see a tremendous amount of value in what we provide, to our industry, to our communities. And I don't want to be a part of losing that. I want us to come out of this decade, with a much brighter future ahead. And it's hard to see what that future looks like with, a lot of the conversations that are going on very publicly.
Jeramiah, we appreciate your time. When Mac took the job as the College Football Playoff Committee spokesperson, did you call him up and say, what in the hell are you doing? That person is never very popular.
It's not, but I congratulated him. That's a point of pride, I think, for ADs, and I love Mac. I'm proud of him. And so I felt a little bit of pride that, he's family. So, I was happy for him, and it is a lot, but Mac never does anything easy, guys. And that's, and I've lived that, and I have a lot of him in me in terms of how I approach things. And so, that's probably where it came from. If someone tells him he shouldn't do something, he finds a way to do it. And, so I know my opinion would not have mattered to him. I would have only driven him further into it.
We just all need to get together as friends of Mac and make him a list of things buzzwords. Don't say these things.
Yeah.
Don't say these things. That way, nobody you're going to walk through an airport and somebody's going to be like, what does game control even mean?
Yeah.
Right. There's so much, guys, that goes in, this in your space. Until you're in front of a microphone, like I'm going to walk away from this going, man, I probably shouldn't have said that because I'm going to get hammered, publicly. When you're up in front of people like that and you're having to speak on behalf of, in his case, the CFP, and it's not like the NFL where everyone's really clear, like no one's complaining that the Dallas Cowboys didn't make it, like everyone knew the rules. We're still in an industry that's it's subjective in many ways. And, and that's hard. You're never going to make everyone happy. But I know Mac well enough that he's always going to do what's right. And I know he'll do a great job leading that space and representing them at a high level.
Don't ever stop being, don't ever be afraid to say what you feel. Cause that was great what you put out there on Friday or Thursday, whenever it was, but, keep fighting the fight, Jeremiah. We do appreciate it. I know we just got 30 minutes from you and you have a lot on your plate. So we do appreciate you.
Thank you, guys. I'm grateful for you and I miss you. And please tell everyone hello and sick 'em and go Broncos.
Yeah, there you go. Jeramiah Dickey, Director of Athletics at Boise State University.